So given all the talk about government bureaucracy and red tape and procurement, maybe I should speak in my former role. I don't know. So I'm happy to field any questions on, because government procurement in of itself it's like a language that takes a lot of time to learn. But no, I'm happy to be here and really excited to learn about all these amazing ideas and just the thought and the expertise here. And so I'll share a little bit about our office and our mission. So it's kind of a catch-all office. We cover a lot. So in my new role, I'll be heading up the WASH effort. And so we are focused more on urban WASH. And our goal is to really increase clean, safe drinking water, sustainable sanitation for better health outcomes and livelihoods among the urban poor. So we're working closely with the government, other partners like Gates, to help build capacity within the government for the SBM to roll it out to the states and the urban local bodies. We're trying to find innovations where we can and really work with the private sector. And I think that's kind of a key component of the way we work, given our development assistance is really a drop in the ocean compared to the capital inflows from the private sector. So we're really looking to partner where we can and leverage the private sector. But given that, we're still really focused on impact. And so how do you measure impact? How are you constantly learning from your work and making sure what you're learning gets integrated into the design, into the implementation? And so given I'm pretty new to my role, I'm still learning about the portfolio. But I did hear about this one cool project that we're doing through our Development Innovations Ventures, which is actually part of the Global Development Lab on behavioral design. So I was going to share about that. And given it's kind of late in the day and I want to keep you guys awake, maybe I'll just show this video and then we can just talk about it a little bit. So this is actually in Kenya, so it's not in India, but I think it could probably be replicated here, given the amount of crazy drivers here in Delhi. That's something I don't think I'll ever overcome, is just the amount of craziness on the road. But apparently it's ubiquitous in other places. So this is a program to try to help overcome some of those challenges, the loss of lives and injuries and accidents.
Chukua hatua mzuri, unatisha wewe. Well done. Beba, beba, beba! Overboard! The fastest potato! Faster, faster! This driver's fast.
Crazy fast, but will we get home alive?
Go for it!
Slow down, boss! Endesha gari vizuri na tutafika salama.
Susha, speak up, kuongea. Together save lives,
pamoja.
Tuokoe maisha.
Susha speak up, kuongea. Together save lives, pamoja. Susha speak up, kuongea. Together save lives, pamoja. Tuokoe maisha. Susha speak up, kuongea.
Speak up, speak up.
Together save lives, pamoja.
Tuokoe maisha. Tuokoe maisha. Tuokoe maisha. Tuokoe maisha.
So yeah, it seems like a pretty simple intervention, common sense, get people to speak up. But in talking to the people who led this project, it's amazing just the thought that went through it, and every step of the way that they're constantly monitoring, but there's a cost associated with that. Higher intensity of patrols and police, but what if they're corrupt? And what if they're practicing rent-seeking behavior? That could be counterproductive. Colombia, they had an interesting approach. They actually use like mimes to like point out people when they're doing wrong things on the road or pedestrians, but that may not work in every culture. So they really got at what's the behavior and the decision-making environment that could really empower the individual. And they said the problem is when you get onto a bus, you feel captive. You feel like you don't have a voice and you can't recoup the money you put to the bus if they're not doing a good job. And also these drivers, there's no incentive for them to continue to because there's so many of them, people are coming in and out, there's no risk for their reputation. So what they did was USAID working with the insurance companies that covered about 90% of the vehicles. They looked at the data from the insurance claims. And then from there, they set up a control group and a treatment group. And they had this idea about, stickers, right? And so, stickers could work, but even then, they conducted a survey on what kind of stickers may work. And so there's like a soft approach where people are saying, oh, maybe you should speak up, realize that didn't work. And they actually got to like some really pretty gruesome stickers of, body parts being cut off, and to really kind of incite that fear, of this could happen to you when you're on the bus, to really kind of spur that, that collective action of people coming together and really with one voice, speaking to the driver. Even tracking where the stickers are placed. It's got to be at eye level. It can't be, it can't be where you can't see it. And then they realized with the treatment group that the stickers just started disappearing after a while, and so they realized the drivers are ripping the stickers off, right? And so what do you do in that case? And so what they thought of is a lottery. So if you have your stickers at the end of the day, you can put your number in for a lottery and get a prize and get some reward through that. So I think, yeah, it's just a good example, and as a result, I guess, in tracking the insurance claims, it was like 40 to 50% fewer insurance claims, 55 lives avoided, 140 accidents averted. And so I think it's this kind of thing that we're looking at. It doesn't have to always be these huge behavioral change communication programs, but it could just be, tweaking the behavior design. In WASH, we even looking at, placements of the wastebasket, in the toilet, or I guess there's studies around like the smell of the toilet is a big issue of why people don't go in, and so can you get the fan going, and can you make it a more pleasant aroma within a toilet. We're looking at even things like where's the toilet placed and those kinds of things. And so yeah, I think we're really excited for ideas from here and to partner with you guys. And if you have any questions on USAID and our work, happy to answer.
Great to be here. I'll quickly walk you through what we're doing at United Seed Fund, and then focus a little on what does it mean for us to be measuring impact and how we're doing that. Very simply put, we're investing in what we call as BOP startups, or businesses that are serving the markets or activating markets for the masses. And essentially, when we say BOP, we mean people living at the base of the economic pyramid. So typically anywhere between $2 to $5 a day, under $2 to $5 a day. The best way to talk about what we do is to give you a quick snapshot into some of the companies that we've invested in. This here has the list of all of the companies that we've invested into. We've been investing in India since 2013 now. So we have 18 companies in the portfolio. A couple of quick examples to give you some insights. One of our earliest investments is a company called Hippocampus. You see that right there. Hippocampus runs kindergartens in villages. So it's the same quality of education that urban children will get access to from a center, from an urban kindergarten chain, but at a price point of around 200 to 300 rupees per month per child, which is roughly, again, under $5 a month. When we invested in Hippocampus, they were at around 15 odd centers. They are now scaled to 250 kindergarten centers in 4 districts in Karnataka, which is in South India. A typical kindergarten center will take up to 60 kids. By the time they're at around 45, 50 kids or so, the center gets to break even, the center gets to being profitable. The center is run by a high school graduate that's from the same village or from neighboring village, usually and has some background in education, invariably a woman. So she's then hired by Hippocampus, trained on the content and the pedagogy that Hippocampus has, and she's up and running the center. They could easily scale to 1,000 centers in just 2 states alone in Karnataka because the demand is that massive. They operate centers in villages where the population is anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 people. So we invested a seed amount of around $100,000 in late 2012, early 2013. They've gone on to raise subsequent rounds of funding, and most recently, late last year, raised over $2 million from the Asian Development Bank. And they're now rapidly scaling and growing. So that's Hippocampus. I'll talk about GoCoop, the one that you see under marketplaces and e-commerce. GoCoop, I believe, at some point was talking to the IIC crew. So you might actually know these guys better. And I remember IIC from the folks at GoCoop mentioning it, so I thought I'll just throw some light on that company. GoCoop is the Alibaba model, but for mostly B2B, but also doing some amount of B2C as well. So the cooperative sector obviously is one of the largest employment generators of employment in India after agriculture. And what GoCoop does is works with cooperatives across sizes, small and large, and enables them to get online, enables them with the entire back end in terms of pickup, ship, drop, fulfillment, escrow, and those types of things, and also helps them connect with buyers. So Levi's, for example, will source khadi denim from a cooperative that's managed by GoCoop. Some of their other buyers include large retail chains like Debenhams and H&M and people like that. So that's another example of a company we've invested in. Around skills and education, another of our portfolio companies is a company called iStar. iStar is in the training and employability space. The problem that they're trying to solve is the fact that only 25% of India's college graduates are actually employable or are able to fit into the workforce and solve the problems that the workforce has. So iStar works with undergrad colleges and integrates themselves into the college system and provides students with training inputs that make them more employable. And these are mostly focused around training people on Tally, which is the QuickBooks equivalent of India, training people on Excel, interview preparedness, job skills, and those kind of things. So that's another example. One last one, and then I'll move to the impact side of things. An interesting company that we've invested in is a company called GIF Store. GIF Store works with small mom and pop retailers in India, popularly known as Kirana stores. and brings them into the mobile economy. So it enables folks like you and me to order from your neighborhood store using a mobile app. And what it does on the back end for the store owner is helps you manage inventory better, helps you understand, keep track of customer orders better, and that sort of thing. But essentially bringing someone that's not right now in the mobile economy onto the mobile economy. So that's what GIF Store does. So we are an impact investor, and what that means is we are about providing financial returns to the investors who've invested into our fund. But this is also about measuring and reporting impact. While we are a finance-first investor, impact is equally paramount. And if you look at the spectrum of impact investing, there are folks that are like ourselves that are finance-first, but then there are also other folks that are impact-first, for whom financial returns are not necessarily as paramount. It's a choice that people make, and I think that's how we've approached it, because we've raised capital from investors, and with the premise that this is a fund structure and it would get returns. And the reason why we think it's important to measure impact is at a fundamental level, we think it makes business sense. You are catering to a group of stakeholders and it's in your interest to ensure that these folks are doing well and enhancing their income levels, or enhancing, being able to give them a better quality of life and that sort of thing, which means that that in effectively ensures that you're doing a better job of what you're doing at running the business that you've set up to do. So we believe that it makes business sense, and that's so. Our approach is to invest into businesses where impact is built into what they're doing, and it's not an unintended byproduct by any means. And the way we're able to evaluate that is to really understand how is it that the entrepreneur is thinking of building this business and scaling it, and what's the consumer segment that he or she is going after while building and scaling this business. One of the reasons why we think it's important to measure impact, in addition to, of course, creating it, is clearly to ensure that you're able to track mission drift. And when I say this, what I mean is if you've set yourself up as an impact business to cater to a particular economic segment, or to provide someone with a particular product or a service, by tracking the impact that you're creating, you know if you're actually meeting those objectives or not. And there are a lot of times when, and we see this in some of our businesses as well. Like, for example, the business that I talked about that works with small and with mom and pop retailers. This business could also be catering to larger format retailers as well, who are not necessarily from low income backgrounds. And it makes sense to be doing that sometimes, because if you're able to get adoption with a wide spectrum of retailers, it means that you're doing well and your product meets, is fundamentally a good product, and it's not a product that was created with keeping in mind only a particular type of consumer. By tracking the impact you're creating, what you know is, you can probably set guardrails to say, fine, I'm okay with X% or a small percent of my consumer base being from a segment that's not what I'm focused on, but that not beyond a certain number. So I think things like that we've realized help with. It helps to measure impact. And the other, of course, is to help you with decision making around your business, because if you're saying that this is about catering to large numbers of low income populations, how well are you doing that? And what needs to change, or what do you need to be fixing? How much does it cost you to be doing that versus probably catering to another segment and things like that. So we find that it's helpful to track and measure impact from a business standpoint, and those two are the reasons. I think, and the reason I articulate only the two of these is because the way everyone else views it is fundamentally you're being driven to measure impact because you've raised capital from a type of entity, or from a group of people that are pushing you to report on those numbers or report on those metrics, because that's what they want to see. But I think what we are saying is it needs to go a little beyond that. And while most businesses cater, even our own companies that we've invested in, for example, would put out impact metrics and measure them because an investor like us is asking. But our premise is go beyond that, and there's reasons why, and it makes business sense to be doing it. A few thoughts on what is it that when entrepreneurs come to us and try and raise capital from us, a few thoughts that we've shared with them on how do we think about measuring impact, because for a lot of entrepreneurs that aren't necessarily familiar with the space, some of this is new. Clearly, like I've shared until now, it makes sense to be thinking strategically about why you need to be measuring impact. It makes sense to report on that, because then as a business, you're not just about profits, you're also about values, you're also helping foster the ecosystem around you, and it makes business sense. The other thing that we do ask them is to think about how often is it that you want to keep tracking impact. We put out our impact reporting metrics every 6 months, and we ask our companies to report on that as well. For companies that it's reasonably frequent to be doing that, but for companies that are in education, for example, 6 months is not a cycle that's aligned with their business cycle, so you need to do it according to the academic year, so then you may have to change it to a year and things like that. So that's important. It's also important to figure out what the risks and assumptions are. For example, if the business that you're running in and the impact that you want to create is linked to a certain type of a bill that the government needs to pass, or an act that the government needs to enact or bring forth, then it helps to document that, because that your ability to create impact is contingent on that. Similarly, if you're assuming let's say in healthcare, if you're making an assumption that I need to ensure that there's a particular device that needs to be in play in order for me or for my business to succeed and create impact, then it makes sense to be documenting that as well. That's, I think, the second. And then also right-sizing sort of how much of impact are you tracking through the life cycle of a company is also important. And the easiest way to explain that ends up being, if you're a startup that's just gotten off the ground, it doesn't make sense to try and track 50 different types of metrics. Some of them may not even be there. Some of them may not be relevant. So making sure that you're looking at what are the right types of metrics I need to be tracking, and how many of those do I need to be tracking, I think is the other view that we've shared with entrepreneurs. And related to that, of course, ensuring that you're lean and not, because it's expensive to be tracking impact and evaluating it. I think that's a fundamental, and we all know that. So you cannot afford to, and when you're a startup and when you're just about getting going, you need to focus on building a business and not spending time, effort, and resources on doing some of the other things. So these are sort of some initial thoughts that we put out. Some of the things that we do at United Seed Fund. So we're very clear that an outcome of the fact that our thinking on impact is we're investing into businesses where the impact is built into what they're doing, and as a consequence, it should be very easy to track because it's core to your business. And that's really what falls out. And the outcome of that ends up being that we're not putting too much of a burden on the portfolio companies that we've invested in to track metrics. It's business parameters. It's a few things that are critical, and that's really what we ask them to track. And related to that, it needs to be metrics that can be tied into business operations, because only then will you treat it as core to what you're doing. If not, you're not going to bother if it's because, I'll have to necessarily either, hire a team or put more people or find someone from outside to be able to measure this. And I think, again, similar to our approach and our thought process, and that's what we look for in businesses as well, the fact that it's built in and it needs to be realistic, measurable, and most importantly affordable as well, like I said, because it does cost a fair bit. So we've categorized our impact in 3 broad parameters. Social impact, which is essentially how many people is this business going to impact positively over a period of time. The going in assumption that we make, or what we look for, is that any business that we invest into needs to be impacting 100,000 families in 5 years from the time when we invest. So that's a number that we have, and then that's what we're tracking. It also includes the number of employees or jobs that the company itself is creating. A lot of times we find that a business that's serving low-income populations also employs people from low-income communities as well. A classic example, again, being microfinance, where all the borrowers in a microfinance company belong to low-income populations, but the loan officers that are servicing them are also from similar communities or backgrounds. The other part on the social impact is the geography. A lot of parts within India are underserved regions just by virtue of being hard to reach, or just for whatever other reasons have not received the kind of economic attention that, let's say, the metro cities have received. So that's another piece that we are tracking as well. On the financial impact side, clearly, in addition to us putting in capital, and we view ourselves as a catalyst, how much additional capital is the company raising from other sources? And we believe that that's another important metric to be tracking in terms of the financial impact, because that then demonstrates how catalytic an impact investor is. Again, I'd go back to some of the other examples in financial inclusion, where early investors that have come into financial inclusion have been impact investors, but eventually the space has gone on to be able to attracting large private equity funds, hedge funds, tech funds, and things like that. So that's another aspect that we look at. Other straightforward things include how much revenue that has the business generated, and how much more capital has come in. And the other metric that we track is what we call as ecosystem impact, which is really around, how many more people has this business been able to engage that otherwise wouldn't have been engaging with an impact business. And that's why we classify partnerships and advisors and things like that a startup in our portfolio is able to engage with as another metric. So what does all of this mean? So this is our 2014 impact report, and I'll pause for a few seconds to let you look at it, and maybe we can jump into questions from there on, because I think that's my last slide. Yes. So we do it's a 6-monthly report. So we put out one every 6. We put out 2 reports in a year, and we aggregate the number from the start of the portfolio. So essentially, the numbers that you see here would be from the start of 2013. So effectively for over 2 years. For 2 years now, this is the kind of impact. The sectors that you see on the graphic here on the right relate to the companies in our portfolio. Relate to the segments within our portfolio. And then these are the 16 companies and where each of them are within the portfolio and how many in those. And then I think the other things again linked to what I was talking about earlier, and the map of the country and the geographies that we're present in as well. I think this should. Happy to take questions. Just thought I would present a quick snapshot in terms of A, what's the industry looking at, B, how are we looking at it, and how are our portfolio companies looking at it. I'll stop with that. Thank you.